You know, when you think about World War II, the battle lines seem so clear, right? It was the Allies versus the Axis. Pretty straightforward. But what if I told you about this one battle, literally days before the war in Europe ended, where American GIs and German soldiers actually fought side by side, as allies? It sounds completely made up, I know, but it's a true story and it is absolutely one of the strangest events of the entire war.
All right, so let's picture this. It's May 1945. The war in Europe is basically over. The Third Reich is just falling to pieces. But way up in the Austrian Alps, kind of hidden from all the major action, this one last, absolutely desperate battle is about to kick off, and it's going to forge the single most bizarre alliance you can possibly imagine. So the big question is, how in the world does this happen? I mean, how do American soldiers suddenly find themselves fighting with German Wehrmacht soldiers, the very guys they'd been trying to kill for years? Well, the answer isn't some big, secret treaty. It all comes down to what, and more importantly, who they were trying to save.
And at the heart of this whole crazy story is a medieval fortress, Itter Castle. But the thing is, what made this place so important had nothing to do with its stone walls or its strategic location. Nope. It was all about the people being held prisoner inside.
See, Itter Castle wasn't your typical prison. Technically, it was administered by the infamous Dachau concentration camp, but it was used for something very, very specific. Think of it as a kind of gilded cage, purpose-built to hold some of France's most high-profile VIP prisoners.
And when I say VIP, I mean it. We are talking about a who's who of French society. You've got former prime ministers locked up in there, famous generals, even well-known athletes. And get this, Charles de Gaulle's own sister was a prisoner too. So these weren't just any prisoners, they were huge strategic assets. And with the Reich collapsing, their lives were in serious, serious danger.
So as everything is falling apart for the Nazis, the SS guards at the castle just take off. They abandon their posts. This leaves the prisoners totally trapped and, even worse, completely vulnerable. Because there were still these roving gangs of hardcore SS troops out there, guys who refused to surrender. The prisoners' only shot at survival was to somehow get a message to the outside world for help.
And man, it was a frantic race against the clock. On May 3rd, one of the prisoners manages to escape with a letter, but he can't find much help. The very next day, the guards are gone, and the prisoners are left to fend for themselves. It took a second, even more desperate escape attempt to finally make contact with the Austrian resistance in a nearby town called Vergl, and that is what set this whole incredible showdown in motion.
Okay, and this is where the story gets really good. That desperate plea for help lands in the laps of two very different men. We're talking commanders from enemy armies who now have to make a choice. Can they actually trust each other enough to fight together? First up is Major Josef Gangl. He's an officer in the German Wehrmacht. But here's the thing about Gangl. He had already defied his own orders. He was supposed to retreat, but he and a handful of his men stayed put. Why? Because they were totally disgusted by the fanatical Waffen-SS, who were running around executing civilians. So Gangl made it his personal mission to protect the local townspeople.
Then, that same message finds its way to an American, Captain John Jack Lee. Now, Lee is all in. He wants to go in full force and rescue these prisoners. But there's a problem. A weak bridge on the way means he has to leave almost all of his heavy support behind. So he's forced to push forward with just his one Sherman tank and a tiny group of about 14 guys.
And this is it. This is the moment. The American captain and the German major meet face to face. They both realize they have the same enemy now, the Waffen-SS. And they share this duty to save the people in that castle. So they shake hands. Think about that. One day they're enemies. The next, they're allies on a single impossible mission. So this brand new, totally improbable team races to Itter Castle. They've got to get ready for a siege. And let me tell you, the odds they were facing were just staggering.
So what does their defense force look like? Well, it's a tiny, cobbled-together crew. You've got Captain Lee's handful of Americans, Major Gangl's German soldiers, and even a young Austrian resistance member. When you add them all up, they have about 28 guys. That's it.
And who are they up against? A force of around 150 hardcore Waffen-SS troops. These guys are heavily armed, and they have one mission: take back that castle. And you have to assume, execute every single one of those VIPs inside. The defenders are outnumbered more than 5 to 1. It's a suicide mission.
The battle kicks off, and almost immediately, things start going wrong. Lee's Sherman tank, their one piece of heavy firepower, gets knocked out by an enemy shell. The phone line they were using to call for help? Cut. Suddenly, they're completely isolated, they're running out of ammo, and they're totally surrounded. You have to wonder, how are they possibly going to get out of this?
So on May 5th, the battle is pure chaos. The attack is on, the tank is gone, and they have no way to contact the outside world. So in this moment of pure desperation, one of the French prisoners himself volunteers for what is basically a suicide run. He's going to try to break through the SS lines on foot and run for help. And somehow, against all odds, the guy actually makes it. Help was finally on the way.
But here's the best part. The part that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. The identity of this hero? It wasn't a soldier. It was a guy named Jean Bourtras, who happened to be an international tennis champion before the war. It's almost funny, right? The one person who had the athletic skill to literally vault over walls and sprint through enemy fire just happened to be there. His incredible speed is what saved them all.
Just as things looked their bleakest, American reinforcements showed up and broke the siege, completely overwhelming the SS attackers. The castle was safe. The prisoners were finally free. But that victory came with a heavy, tragic price. So let's break down what happened to everyone. The SS attackers were defeated, and about 100 were taken prisoner. The French VIPs, all rescued, safe and sound. Captain Lee, the American hero, survived and was rightly awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his bravery. But Major Josef Gangl, the German officer who did the right thing, he was tragically killed by a sniper. He died pushing a French prime minister out of the line of fire.
And what's so wild is that just 2 days after this battle, Germany officially surrendered. The war in Europe was over. But Major Gangl's sacrifice was never forgotten. He's considered a national hero in Austria today. And in that little town of Vergl, there's a street named after him, a permanent reminder of the man who died protecting it.
The battle for Castle Itter is it's this amazing story about how, in the final, chaotic moments of a war, the normal rules can just completely fall away. And it really makes you think, right? When the lines between friend and enemy get all blurry like that, what is it that really makes someone a hero?